The White House has said that President Donald Trump is prepared to unleash hell on earth, as we're hearing that Iran has outright rejected Donald Trump's 15-point plan for potential peace. Iran has said that Donald Trump is negotiating with himself, that there is no agreement whatsoever. Donald Trump said that they needed to come to some sort of agreement or bombs would be dropping in the Middle East on Iran's critical energy infrastructure systems. And now we're hearing that that is likely going to be the path that we are going to be seeing unfold. Let's go ahead and take a look at the latest headlines so that way you can see it for yourself. Live updates coming out from CBS News. The White House says that Trump will unleash hell if Iran does not make a deal. Now, Iran state-owned Press TV says the regime has rejected the list of points that was sent by Donald Trump's administration via intermediaries in a bid to get peace talks going. Tehran has mocked the Trump administration for the negotiations with yourselves, but said earlier that it was reviewing terms for potential negotiations. Now, in addition to that, let's go ahead and take a look at this live feed coming out from NBC News, updated 57 minutes ago. Iran rejects Trump's plan to end the war and issue its own demands. State TV has reported the United States sent Iran a 15-point plan to end the war that was delivered via Pakistan, according to two regional sources and two U.S. officials. Now, we're also hearing, as I mentioned, that this has been rejected. Here is another one coming out. Iran rejects U.S. ceasefire plan, issues its own demands. As strikes land across the Middle East, Iran is saying, no, we have our own set of demands for the United States. This coming out, you can see about 2 hours ago. White House threatens more attacks if Iran does not make a deal. Arab mediators say Iran has shown willingness to hear out diplomatic efforts to bring the U.S. and Iran together for talks after Tehran has rejected Washington's proposal to end this war. And live updates coming out from Al Jazeera. Arachi, the foreign minister for Iran, says no talks with the U.S. as Trump vows to hit harder. We are hearing that things are escalating significantly with the conflict in the Middle East. Now, in addition to that, if you haven't already heard the breaking news coming out, I wanted to share this with you guys. Just a little while ago, we heard that a jury has ordered Meta and Google to pay a woman $6 million in a social media addiction trial. Now, I wanted to mention this to you guys because if you do not see pinned in the comments, I would like it if you care about this situation here. Wanted to just make a quick note for you guys. I partnered with change.org on something that I think is really important. And that is, we've launched a petition to focus on protecting our children from addictive social media design. We've already known that this was something that is being looked at right now, specifically things like late night notifications that keep them on their phones when they should be sleeping. If you agree that this is something that needs to change, you can sign this petition right now using the link that's in this video description in the comments, or I'm going to have it pinned as well afterwards in the description. It takes just a few seconds, but it can help push this real change, and you can see this actually happening in the headlines right now. So we have that petition. If you guys can, if you're interested, if you think it's important to protect our children from social media addictions, this literally just hit today. Partnered with change.org. Go ahead and check it out. But so that's going to be there available for you. If you want to support that, just takes a moment to put that signature on that petition. But let's go ahead and take a look at the breaking news as we're hearing that things are escalating with the conflict in the Middle East, with the war with the United States and Iran. Let's go ahead and take a look. Now, before we dive in, though, do me a favor. Please hit that like button. Subscribe to stay up to date if this is your first time here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the updates so that way you can see the latest. We're also going to be diving into video footage as well. Now, as I mentioned, the White House says that Trump will unleash hell if Iran does not make a deal. And it looks like Iran is outright rejecting the United States' calls here. So here's what to know about the Iranian war. Iran state-owned Press TV says that the regime has rejected a list of points sent by Trump's administration via an intermediary in a bid to get peace talks going. Tehran has mocked the Trump administration for negotiating with yourselves, but said earlier that it was reviewing terms for potential negotiations. The White House press secretary Carolyn Leavitt said Wednesday afternoon that talks between Washington and Tehran are still ongoing. She warned that President Trump will unleash hell if a peace deal is not made. The Pentagon is expected to send service members and hardware from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East, according to two sources, bolstering the U.S.'s military presence in the region as President Trump considers using ground forces in a war that he claims is already won. And we're hearing, yes, troops, more soldiers, they are going to be making their way over to the Middle East in preparation, they're saying, by Friday for some major strikes. Now, while Iran and Israel continue trading strikes and the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed, markets appear to have taken hope in Mr. Trump's optimism. Stocks are up, oil prices as well, although are back down. Amid the market tumult, concerns have been raised about possible insider trading after an unusual spike in oil future transactions just before Mr. Trump announced talks with Iran. Now, we have the live feeds coming in here. You can see there's involvement with Ukraine, the Strait of Hormuz, potential legislation being pushed through. Nearly 300 U.S. service members have been wounded since Iran's war started. CENTCOM says. The live feeds coming in from CBS News. So we're getting these updates coming in, and we're hearing that they are saying they're preparing to unleash hell. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think that we're going to get some sort of peace agreement? Do you think that Iran is going to come to the table? As of right now, March 25th, 2026, it's currently 4:19 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Houston, Texas. We're hearing Iran is saying, no, there will be no peace. We've rejected it. They're saying that Trump is negotiating with himself. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more articles coming out on this. The live updates. Iran rejects Trump's plan to end the war and issues its own demands. State TV reports. The United States sent Iran a 15-point plan to end the war that was delivered via Pakistan, according to two regional sources and a U.S. official. Here's what to know. There was a 15-point plan that was provided by the Trump administration. The United States had sent Iran a 15-point plan to end the war, according to two regional sources and a U.S. official. The proposal was delivered to Iranian officials through Pakistan, the sources have said. Ships 119, thank you so much for support, joining the Ram Fam. Appreciate that a ton. Tehran responds. Iran responded negatively to the U.S. proposal, state media reported, citing an unnamed senior political security official with knowledge of the details of the proposal. A top Iranian military official earlier scoffed at the idea of talks, asking the U.S. whether the level of your internal conflicts reached the point where you are negotiating with yourselves. Wow. Man, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Jeff Monge, thank you for the $5 super chat, says, will there be a ground invasion? Jeff, we're hearing that we have things set in place now for this to go ahead and go forward. Now, reading on, it says, more troops to Mideast. Iran's powerful parliament speaker warned that Tehran was closely monitoring U.S. troops' movements after two sources told NBC News that Trump approved the deployment of more than 1,000 paratroops. So there you have it, Jeff. In response to that, we're hearing that these troops, they are getting prepared right now, and we're hearing that more troops are on their way as well in preparation for a potential ground invasion. Now, potential, we will see. Death toll. More than 2,000 people have been killed across the Middle East as the war continues in its fourth week. In Iran, Israeli and American strikes have killed more than 1,200 people, according to the Iranian Red Crescent Society. At least 1,000 people have been killed in Lebanon, and 17 have died in Israel. 13 U.S. service members have been killed, and 2 more died, non-combat causes as well. Now, insights and analysis are coming in here from NBC News. And you can see this is another live feed that we have as well. So lots of updates coming in. House Speaker says Iran should take note of U.S. troop buildup in the Middle East. Mike Johnson letting them know we are ready for potential boots on the ground. We don't have that yet, he says, but to take note that they are getting ready. I think Iran should watch that buildup, and they need to take note of that, Johnson told reporters. He also called on Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial oil and gas shipping. Johnson said that he believes that the U.S.-Israeli conflict with Iran is nonetheless nearing an end. Operation Epic Fury is almost done. I mean, I think the mission that was very clearly defined in the beginning, the objectives, have been met, Johnson said. Iranian defense officials say Trump's threats and ultimatums are acts of war. Now, let me know in the comments, do you think this is an act of war? If you think it is, put yes in the comments. If you think no, put a 47 for support for the Trump administration moving forward on this. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this in a post on X. The commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force warned that every threat and ultimatum against the regime in Tehran constitutes an act of war. Saeed Majid Mousavi added that today's strikes on the Israeli cities of Dimona and Haifa were direct responses to recent threats from the United States. And here you can see that post on X. Egypt's foreign minister says Cairo is ready to host peace talks. We're seeing various nations starting to get involved in this. UN chief pleads for a de-escalation, says Lebanon can't be the next Gaza. Iran rejects the U.S. proposal to end the war, state TV reports. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one. This update is the primary headline that we were looking at on this live feed. Iran has responded negatively to the U.S.'s plans to end the war, according to Iranian state television English language broadcaster Press TV. It cited an unnamed senior political security official with knowledge of the details of the proposal. Tehran will not allow Trump to dictate the terms or the timing of the conflict's resolution, according to the report. The official detailed 5 conditions that must be met before Iran agrees to end the war, including a complete halt to aggression and assassinations by the United States and Israel, and recognition of Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, the crucial passageway for global oil. There you have it. Let me know your thoughts. We're hearing Iran and the United States polar opposites on their stances right now, and it doesn't look like there is any sort of agreement underway at this time. Man, let me know your thoughts taking a look at the live feeds. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this coming out from the Associated Press to get a little bit more information as well. Iran rejects the U.S. ceasefire plan, issues its own demands as strikes land across the Middle East. So the United States put together a 15-point plan. Iran responded back with a 5-point plan. And now we're hearing that the White House is saying if there is not an agreement reached, that Trump is going to unleash hell on earth. Let's go ahead and take a look at this here coming out from the Associated Press. Now this article says, Iran on Wednesday today dismissed an American plan to pause the war in the Middle East and launched more attacks on Israel and Gulf Arab countries, including an assault that sparked a huge fire at Kuwait International Airport. Iran's defiance came as Israel launched airstrikes on Tehran and the United States deployed paratroopers and more Marines to the region. Iranian state television's English language broadcaster quoted an anonymous official as saying Iran rejected America's ceasefire proposal and has its own demands for an end to the fighting. Iran will end the war when it decides to do so and when its own conditions are met, the hardliner-controlled Press TV quoted the official as saying. Earlier, 2 officials from Pakistan, which transmitted the U.S.'s plan to Iran, described the 15-point proposal broadly, saying it addressed sanctions relief, a rollback of Iran's nuclear program, limits on missiles, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz, through which a fifth of the world's oil is shipped. An Egyptian official involved in the mediation efforts said that the proposal also includes restrictions on Iran's support for armed groups. The official spoke on conditions of anonymity to discuss the details that have not yet been released. Now, the White House press secretary Carolyn Leavitt insisted the U.S. and Iran are in ongoing talks, even as Iranian officials deny it. Talks continue. They are productive, as the president said on Monday, and they will continue to be, Leavitt said at a White House briefing on Wednesday. Leavitt warned that if talks with Iran don't pan out, President Donald Trump will ensure that they are hit harder than they have ever been hit before. Now, some of the points in the U.S. ceasefire proposal were non-starters in negotiations before the war. Iran has insisted that it won't discuss its ballistic missile program or its support of regional militias, which it views as key to its security. And its ability to control passage through the Strait of Hormuz represents one of the biggest strategic advantages as well. Now, in regards to that ballistic missile program, we're hearing that Iran has not been telling the truth, has not been divulging their full capabilities. We saw that displayed when they shot out that missile to Diego Garcia, and that was nearly 2,000 miles away. We're hearing that that means that they have the capabilities of hitting NATO nations, Europe, and so there's a major concern right now of the spillover of this war potentially attacking nations in Europe. Now, Iran's attacks on regional energy infrastructure, along with its restrictions on the strait, have sent oil prices skyrocketing, putting pressure on the U.S. to find a way to end the chokehold and to calm the markets. Now, also, more U.S. troops are going to be on the way to the Middle East. So we had heard that two things were unfolding at the same time. President Donald Trump saying we're on the verge of potential peace and negotiations, yet at the same time sending more troops over to the Middle East in preparation for escalation in this conflict, and this going even deeper and further into a greater war. Now, at least 1,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division will be sent to the Middle East in the coming days. 3 people with knowledge of the plans told the Associated Press. They spoke on conditions of anonymity to discuss sensitive military plans. The paratroopers are trained to jump into hostile or contested areas to secure key territory and airfields. The Pentagon is also in the process of sending about 5,000 more Marines trained in amphibious assaults and thousands of sailors to the region. Most Americans believe the U.S. military action against Iran has gone too far, and many are worried about affording gasoline, according to a new Associated Press poll. Chocolate, thank you for the super chat. Great channel. Thanks, Steve, for doing this channel. You are very welcome. I appreciate that a ton. Normally, I would say hit the like button and subscribe, but also wanted to mention the breaking news for you guys today on protecting our children from addiction to social media. There's a petition that I launched with change.org. If you could do me a favor and sign that, that also is something I think is huge if you believe in support for protection of our children. Reading on, diplomatic efforts face major challenges. Mediators are pushing for possible in-person talks between the Iranians and the Americans, perhaps as soon as Friday in Pakistan, the Egyptian and Pakistani officials have said. So we're hoping that maybe Friday we can see some sort of movement towards peace, but if not, we're hearing that troops are in place for escalation of war by the United States. Trump has said that the U.S. is in negotiations right now, and that the participants included Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, Secretary of the State Marco Rubio, and Vice President J.D. Vance. He has not disclosed who from Iran they are in contact with, but said the other side can tell you they'd like to make a deal. So this was one of the concerns as well. People saying that they're unaware of the fact that negotiations are even taking place. We're not hearing who the United States is in negotiations with. And we're hearing some people in Iran saying no negotiations are taking place. Trump is negotiating with himself, is what Iran is saying. Press TV cited an Iranian 5-point plan for a ceasefire coming from the official who rejected the U.S. proposal. That plan included the halt of killing of its officials, means to make sure that no other war is waged against it, reparations for the war, the end of hostilities, and Iran's exercise of sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. So these are the 5 points that Iran came back and said we must have done in order for us to have any type of ceasefire. Man, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Those measures, particularly reparations and its continued chokehold over the Strait of Hormuz, likely will be unacceptable by the White House. Now, while Iran and Oman both have territory in the strait, its narrow shipping channels are viewed as international waters through which all ships can travel. Any talks between the United States and Iran would face monumental challenges. It's not clear who in Iran's government has the authority to negotiate or would be willing to, as Israel has vowed to continue killing the country's leaders. Iran remains highly suspicious of the United States, which twice under the Trump administration has attacked during high-level diplomatic talks, including the February 28th strikes that started the current war. Now, Israel launches new strikes on Iran and also comes under attack as well. The Israeli military said Wednesday afternoon today that it had completed several waves of airstrikes into Iran. The army also said that as a part of its strikes, a day earlier, it targeted an Iranian submarine development center in Isfahan. Missile alert sirens sounded multiple times in Israel as Iran and the Lebanon-based militia group Hezbollah launched attacks. Iran-backed Hezbollah has fired rockets into northern Israel around the clock since the war began, disrupting the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Iran also kept up the pressure on its Gulf Arab neighbors. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry said that it had destroyed at least 8 drones in its oil-rich eastern province. And missile alert sirens sounded in Bahrain. Kuwait said that it shot down multiple drones, but that one hit a fuel tank at Kuwait International Airport. Iran's death toll has passed 1,500, its health ministry has said. Israel says 20 people have died in the war, including 2 soldiers in Lebanon. At least 13 U.S. military members have been killed, along with more than a dozen civilians in the occupied West Bank and Gulf Arab states. Now, authorities say nearly 1,100 people have died in Lebanon, where Israel has targeted Hezbollah. In Iraq, where Iranian-supported militant groups have also entered the conflict, 80 members of the security forces have been killed. A top security advisor, Khalid al-Kabahi, said. Now, energy prices fall back but still remain high. The news of potential negotiations drove down the price of oil. Brent crude oil, the international standard, has neared $120 a barrel during the conflict, but was trading around $100 on Wednesday. Today, it is still up around 35% from the start of this war. Now, economists and leaders, they have warned of far-reaching effects if energy prices remain high, from rising prices on food and other basics to higher rates for mortgages and auto loans. Iran has allowed a small number of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, but has said no ships from the U.S., Israel, or countries seen as linked to them can pass through. Now, Madhani reported from Washington, Quarter from the Hague, Netherlands, and Ahmad from Islamabad. Now, so we have these updates that have been pouring in here. We're getting all these sources coming in saying that Iran and the United States, it looks like we have no agreement whatsoever. They're being rejected back and forth. Maria, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. I appreciate that a ton. But let's go ahead now and take a look at some more footage that's been coming out here. Want to get you caught up on the latest as we're hearing that Iranian military has issued a defiant message to Donald Trump. I've got some video footage that has come out in the past couple of hours. Wanted to share with you so you can get caught up on the latest.
Right about 20 minutes now past the hour, President Trump sounding optimistic about talks with Iran, saying that negotiators have made progress on at least one major point.
It all starts with they cannot have a nuclear weapon. Just, I said yesterday, they said, what are the top 10? I said, well, number 1, 2, and 3 is they can't have a nuclear weapon. And they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And we're talking about that. And I don't want to say in advance, but they've agreed they will never have a nuclear weapon. They've agreed to that.
That from Tuesday. Now on Wednesday morning, Peter Doocy picks it up. North Lawn, White House. Peter, nice to see you. Good morning.
Bill, good morning. And that is a big step closer to the end of Epic Fury if Epic Fury was started to stop Iran from getting a nuke. Now officials here are floating a 15-point peace plan to end the war once and for all.
It was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it was a very significant prize. It wasn't nuclear related. It was oil and gas related. And it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people.
Part of the problem is that part of the group that created all these problems in Iran, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, has a spokesman saying about these negotiations, have your internal conflicts reached the point where you are negotiating with yourselves? Our first and last word has been the same from day one, and it will stay that way. Someone like us will never come to terms with someone like you. But President Trump is suggesting that the old guard is out of the mix.
We killed all their leadership. And then they met to choose new leaders, and we killed all of them. And now we have a new group, and we can easily do that, but let's see how they turn out. We have really regime change. You know, this is a change in the regime because the leaders are all very different than the ones that we started off with that created all those problems.
President Trump is still really frustrated by a lack of help with the war effort from NATO allies, but he says with this war, America's allies in the Gulf have been pretty good. Bill?
All right, Peter, thank you. Peter Ducey kicking off a day there at the White House. Dana.
Let's bring in Brian Hook. He's a former U.S. Special Representative for Iran, so you know this well. Want to pull up here, apparently these are the U.S. and Iranian demands as we understand them right now. Among other things, the United States, in addition to the no nuclear facilities, zero nuclear enrichment, missile constraints, guaranteed free and safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, and an end to Iran's proxy support in the region. There's several things that Iran is demanding, like compensation for the war and a new payment system for the Strait of Hormuz. But also, you just heard Peter Ducey say that at least state media is telling the world that Iran is not having any of these discussions. Based on your experience, where do you think it actually stands?
Well, Dana, where I think it stands, we're at a fascinating moment that has eluded so many American presidents. And President Trump seems to have Iran where every president has wanted to have Iran, which is under pressure and coming to us for a deal. And historically, if you look at either President Obama or President Biden, it was the reverse. We were under pressure because of Iranian nuclear blackmail, and then we would give into the pressure, and then we would chase Iran all over Europe trying to get some sort of deal, which ended up being the Iran nuclear deal, which President Trump was right to leave. Now we have this dynamic where the Iranian regime is certainly feeling the heat, and they're looking for some sort of off-ramp. And so this is a really important moment. It's a sign of possible progress.
I'm going to put up on the board for everyone to see the leaders who have been killed, but there's also some that the president might be able to work with and talk to. I don't know if you know this Parliament Speaker, Galiba, if I'm saying that correctly. Do you think the United States or anyone of our allies in the Gulf who want us to keep making sure that we get at least the demands that President Trump is asking for in regards to nuclear weapons, can that guy be dealt with, the Parliament Speaker?
I think this is an encouraging sign that the Speaker is now coming forward. It seems to be that he's the person potentially on the other side of the table. And this is a good development because when you're dealing with the Iranian regime, it's not a normal country. And if you're sitting across from the foreign minister, that's often theater and smokescreen. But this Speaker of the Iranian parliament is a former IRGC leader, and he's real. He's an important guy in the system. And so when I think about this, you had Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner doing talks with the Iranians in Oman and in Geneva. I think those talks were productive. But ultimately, Iran could not get out of its own way, and they over-negotiated with them, and they didn't take our demands seriously. But now I think we're at a moment after now almost a month of war where we may have the right people potentially at the table, and they're looking at this list, and Dana, you showed it on screen earlier. That's the right set of demands around the nuclear weapons, the missiles, and the proxies. Those have to be resolved once and for all.
Brian, new sound from former Secretary Tony Blinken has just come in. I understand this is from Harvard last night. I have not heard it yet. Apparently expressing some regret about actions that they did or did not take. Let's listen to it together and get your reaction on the other side. Here's the former Secretary of State under President Biden.
You kept referring to an agreement that was longer and stronger.
That's right.
And you never got there.
Yep.
Given what's going on in the world, is that a regret today?
Yeah, it is. I wish we had gotten there. We worked very hard on getting that longer and stronger agreement. And I think at various points, we were really leaning into it. The Iranians were leaning back. At other points, they were leaning in, and we had our own constraints. I'll acknowledge, too, that sometimes politics gets in the way. You have midterm elections. It shouldn't be, but it is too often a factor.
Now, Brian, you and I and our audience are hearing those comments from Secretary Blinken for the first time. Do you have an immediate reaction to that?
Well, the problem with that whole line of diplomacy that he pursued is he had no leverage. And the Iranian regime did not fear President Biden. They just simply didn't take him seriously. And so his negotiators didn't really have much power. It's just the reverse now. President Trump's negotiators have leverage and they have power. And there is, the negotiating table is not balanced. It's imbalanced in favor of the United States. And that was something that completely eluded the Biden administration, and they were always chasing the Iranians for a deal. They were trying so desperately to get back into the Iran nuclear deal. And so now I think the United States is in a much better position, and the president has used pressure and diplomacy very well.
Brian Hook joining us from Miami today. Thank you so much.
There you have it, you guys. Now, I also wanted to share with you something that I had seen just came out recently from Fox News, and that's an update on the demands coming out to end the war. Let's go ahead and take a look at this clip right here, as this one says Iran outlines demands as Trump proposes his 15-point plan to end the war. And we heard that he provided that 15-point plan. Iran coming back with a 5-point plan, and we're hearing this is a non-starter. And they're saying that if there is not a deal reached this week, that Trump said that he is prepared to unleash hell. So let's go ahead and take a look at this update on the latest news.
You've got more, right?
We do, because we want to get back to the intensifying situation in the Middle East as the wheels of diplomacy turn in the conflict with Iran. The Pentagon is keeping up the pressure on the regime. It's preparing to deploy one of the most elite and iconic forces in the U.S. military to the Persian Gulf. And Matt Finn is in Dubai with more. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Dana. Today marks the second day of President Trump's pause on striking Iran's infrastructure. It's potentially opening up a path to diplomacy. And President Trump says the U.S. is having peace talks with Iran. But so far, Iran has been denying the past couple of days that those talks are happening. Now, this morning, the Wall Street Journal reports that the United States has sent Iran a 15-point plan to end the war. It's largely what the U.S. was asking of Iran before Operation Epic Fury began. The document was sent through intermediaries, and it calls on Iran in part to dismantle 3 nuclear sites and any enrichment on Iranian soil, and to dismantle its ballistic missile program. In return, Iran would have nuclear-related sanctions lifted. Now, yesterday, the Prime Minister of India said he had a productive call with the president about peace, and Pakistan says it's willing to physically host or facilitate talks for a settlement here in the Middle East. Now, the commander of the 82nd Airborne Division, Major General Brandon Tegmeyer, has been ordered to deploy here to the Middle East as the Trump administration decides whether to send the entire elite 82nd Airborne Division for possible operations. That could mean thousands of additional U.S. troops in addition to the Marines already deployed here. One of the objectives could be boots on the ground in Iran or taking critical Karg Island. And Saudi Arabia and the UAE have proposed a new trade route that would use the Gulf but avoid the Strait of Hormuz. It connects Daman and Sharjah without using the strait, which is, as we know, effectively closed as Iran holds its grip on it. And today the UAE says it is now engaged more than 1,800 drones since Operation Epic Fury began. A short while ago, our cell phones went off, giving us a warning about possible incoming here, but then the all clear was given as well. Dana, Bill.
Okay, thank you, Matt Finn.
So, Dana, just want to run down a little bit about what's happening in the region, in the theater, and knowing that there's more firepower coming in. 82nd Airborne and the Marine Expeditionary Units, 2 of them here. You've got the Navy spread out and well around the area of Iran. On the Strait of Hormuz, Matt was touching on this a little bit. There's these little islands that are, not a lot of people live there. In fact, they're just manned on behalf of the Iranian military. And they're right here in the Strait of Hormuz. If I can go ahead and pop this up for you. You know, this waterway here gets very narrow, and it gets very shallow too, especially at low tide. But these islands here, I'll go in one more thing. These are part of the Naziat Islands, okay? And you've got Abu Musa, Greater Tomb, Lesser Tomb. Why are they significant? They're essentially beachheads in the middle of this strait that can be manned on behalf of the Iranians, and they can be manned with anti-ship missiles. And they've been hit a couple times now by the U.S. in the Israeli military. So I'll just come over here and show you a little bit of what the satellite imagery is showing us. On one of these islands, Abu Musa that I just mentioned right there, you can have a port here on behalf of the Iranian military. All right, this is the before picture. Slide on over here, Jimmy, and I'll show you the other strike damage here. That building is gone. It's just been entirely removed. Here's another island here. I'll point to two things on the map here. This building here and this hangar over here have both been targets, all right? This is the before image. Pop on over here, and that one's gone, and that one's gone as well. Why could this be significant? If the Marines or the 82nd Airborne is going to take territory, somewhere in the Strait of Hormuz, these would be the islands you would man in part to make sure that shipping lines are safe to go through. It's a big challenge. Robert O'Brien joins me now to talk about this and whether or not getting anywhere in these talks. And sir, welcome back to our coverage. It's good to have you.
Good to be with you, Bill.
We have the list of the Iranian demands so far. And I'll just tick them off. Closing all military bases in the Persian Gulf is one. The payment of the reparations for the attacks on Iran. You've got an order for the Strait of Hormuz that allows Iran to charge transit fees to the waterway. And there's like 4 or 5 other things on here that I cannot see the Americans agreeing to. How do you go about this?
Well, Bill, that's not going to happen. That's an Iranian, fairy tale wish list. President Trump has been very clear on this from the start. He sent Jared and Steve Witkoff to Geneva and to Oman before the Operation Epic Fury. And he said, look, Iran, you have to dismantle your nuclear program. You have to take out your ballistic missile program. And you have to stop paying your proxies. You have to stop paying Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis to attack Israel and the U.S. and shipping it in the region. That's it. And if you don't do it, we're going to hit you. And the Iranians came back and reportedly said that they were going to build 10 nuclear bombs. And they got Epic Fury in response. Now, after a month of war, a month of Iran being pounded, President Trump has all the leverage again in the negotiations, and we'll see what the Iranians are going to do.
And we'll see if they sit down, which has not been confirmed either.
Yeah.
Here's the president yesterday talking about this prize. Go ahead and roll this here.
They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. It wasn't nuclear related. It was oil and gas related. And it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people.
Okay, how do you interpret that when you read between the lines based on the people you're talking to? What's that mean?
Well, look, Bill, the whole regime was wiped out. From the Ayatollah down, the top 50 leaders in the regime were taken out. So we need some sort of proof that the people we're talking to actually have the authority to negotiate. And so my guess is, and I don't know, I haven't talked to the president about this, but my guess is that they let a tanker through or something of that nature to show that they had the authority to negotiate, kind of a proof of authority. They've now done that, and now the negotiations can start, and we'll see if they can fulfill their obligations if that they agree to.
There's one report, Iranian English television is saying that just crossed the wires about 7 minutes ago from the AP that they're denying the initial offer on behalf of the Americans. Stand by on that. John Brennan used to run the CIA. Have you been watching some of these comments? Just go ahead and play the clip about how he trusts the Iranians more than the American president.
Well, I tend to believe Iran more than I do Donald Trump, because he could not acknowledge the truth even when it is, he's slapped in the face with it repeatedly. He's going to make these claims about negotiations, that the Iranians now are sending signals that they really want to make a deal, and indicates they're going to make a deal on our terms. I don't think anything close to the truth in that statement.
Who are they cheering for?
Well, this is no surprise coming from Brennan, unfortunately, and sadly, he did so much damage to the CIA with his Russiagate hoax, and he's been a very bad actor in the intelligence community, and he's done lasting damage to America. And now the fact that he's basically shilling for the Iranians and criticizing the president of the United States, which I would have never done that with Biden or Obama, and most Republicans wouldn't have. But the fact that he's basically rooting for the Iranians is really a heartbreak to see a former official do that.
No doubt. Robert, good to see you again.
Thank you, Bill. Nice to
There you have it, you guys. And man, you heard MS Now saying that they trust the IRGC more than they trust Donald Trump. Let me know in the comments, who do you trust more, 47 or the IRGC? Drop it in the comments. Let's go ahead and take a look at this as we've got the updates coming out that these talks are falling apart. We heard that there was a 5-day pause on hitting potential Iranian infrastructure, power sources, and now we're hearing that it looks like this ain't happening, that this is not going to come together. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more updates. You can see here, this coming out 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so about 2 hours ago. White House threatens more attacks if Iran doesn't make a deal. And we're hearing that what happened was the United States said talks are going well. Iran came out and said, what talks? There are no talks. We heard that Donald Trump presented a 15-point plan. Iran responded saying no, presented a 5-point plan, and Iran said, who are you negotiating with? Yourself? There are no negotiations taking place. And we're hearing that the White House came out and said that Trump has said that he will unleash hell if Iran does not make this deal. You can see this coming out today from the live feeds, March 25th. White House says Trump is prepared to unleash hell. Let's go ahead and take a look at this coming out from the Wall Street Journal. Arab mediators say that Iran has shown willingness to hear out diplomatic efforts to bring the U.S. and Iran together for talks after Tehran rejected Washington's proposal to end the war. The White House threatened further attacks on Iran if Tehran doesn't make a deal to end the conflict. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt confirmed this, that the U.S. is negotiating to end the war with Iran, but declined to say whom has held talks they've held talks with. And that is the concern right now, because Iran is coming out and saying no talks are taking place. Yet at the same time, they're saying no, talks are taking place and we need to make a deal. And if we don't, there's going to be more war. But we don't know who the White House is talking with at this time. Iran is privately showing a willingness to hear out diplomatic efforts to end the war. Arab mediators and other people familiar with the matter have said after Iranian state media rejected the U.S. proposal to end the war. They cautioned the odds of success remain low as both sides have staked out maximalist positions, and Iran remains highly suspicious of negotiations after 2 previous efforts at diplomacy ended in war. The Trump administration doesn't plan to seek congressional authorization for the war in Iran. Iran signaled that it could move to close or control a second strait, the Bab al-Mandeb, with the help of Yemen's Houthi rebels. The U.S. has begun to amass ground troops near Iran. Gulf countries said they were targeted by drone and missile attacks, including a strike on Kuwait's international airport. And Iraq said that it planned to lodge a protest with the United States after a strike on a military clinic. So, man, a lot of developments coming out, and we're hearing that it looks like things are moving more in the direction of greater conflict, less in the direction of potential peace. Take a look here. Arachi, this coming out from the live feeds from Al Jazeera, says no talks with the U.S. as Trump vows to hit harder. Today, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Arachi says the U.S. is sending messages through different mediators, which does not mean negotiations. The White House has delivered a sharp message to Iran, saying President Donald Trump prefers a peaceful path, but is prepared to hit harder than they have ever been hit before, if necessary. And man, let's take a look here. The live feeds are updating. 1 minute ago, Saudi Arabia intercepts drones over the eastern province. 6 minutes ago, USPS raises rates as the war pushes up fuel costs. And we're hearing that Iran is aware of the economic impacts and is trying to take advantage of that. 11 minutes ago, alarm sirens sounded in Bahrain. 21 minutes ago, gathering of U.S. forces signals to Iran to prepare for war to continue. And I shared this with you. We're going to take a look at some video footage on this as well. The Iranians are very well aware of the deployment and gathering of U.S. troops and warships. They have seen it twice before, and they are watching it right now. And they know what it is going to lead to. So right now, they are much more certain of a confrontation of this war than an end to it. And they say they are preparing for it. They also are aware of the U.S. eye on Karg Island. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, wrote on X that based on intelligence reports, our enemies are preparing to occupy one of the Iranian islands with support from a regional state. It says our forces are monitoring all enemy movements, and if they take any step, they will target all vital infrastructure of that regional state without mercy. According to some people explaining what he said, he's referring here to the United Arab Emirates, that it might be cooperating with the United States and encouraging it to take Karg Island. And we've heard this, that the UAE, they are eager after what has unfolded with Iran to jump in and support the United States. But also, Iranians over the last few days have been saying that they know that if this happens, they are sure that will be very destructive to that country, the United Arab Emirates, and also U.S. troops. Karg is a small, exposed island that is very close to the Iranian mainland. They are threatening that if U.S. troops land on it, that will be the thing that Iranians are waiting for, and that it will be very detrimental to the safety of U.S. troops. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Should we put U.S. troops on the ground in Iran? Should they take Karg Island? Should they go in with an offensive, as we've heard, to go in and get the enriched uranium out of Iran's hands? Yes or no? Drop it in the comments. Do we need boots on the ground? Let me know your thoughts. But let's take a look at some more video footage coming out on the negotiations and on troops entering into Iran. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more video footage.
President Trump says Iran wants to make a deal. The president says he's offered Iran a 15-point peace plan to end the war, but Iran says no talks have taken place at all. Meanwhile, the Pentagon's preparing to deploy 1,500 elite paratroopers to the Middle East. Let's bring in White House correspondent Karen Travers, senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez, and ABC's Matt Rivers in Doha, Qatar for more. Hi, Karen. So what's in this peace plan?
Diane, the president first mentioned this idea of a 15-point plan earlier this week. He didn't give specifics, but said at that point that Iran had agreed to it. Now we know that Pakistan has passed on this proposal of a 14-point plan to end the current conflict. It includes and addresses Iran's ballistic missile program, Iran's nuclear program, as well as maritime routes. But the important thing here is that even though the president says that talks are happening between the U.S. and Iran still continues to say that there are no negotiations. A spokesperson for the foreign ministry then said today these talks are not taking place and, quote, no one can trust U.S. diplomacy. Diane, the president also said yesterday again that there is nobody knows who to talk to at this point, that all their leaders are gone because of U.S. strikes taking out different layers of Iran's leadership. But the president also said we're talking to the right people. They want to make a deal so badly. So at this point, it's a 15-point plan that the administration has offered up on those broad details, and we'll see how Iran responds over these coming days.
Louis, the Pentagon's preparing to deploy up to 1,500 paratroopers to the Middle East. Where are they going, and what will they be doing?
Diane, that's a really important question, and we don't really know the answer. What we do know is that about 1,500 paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division, based at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, will be making their way to the Middle East region. Now, the question is exactly where, but one can suppose that what is going to happen is that they're going to be sent to a support area where they can build up their resources, where they'll have the logistical support that they need in case they are needed for whatever purpose. What we can glean, though, is that they are sending the 82nd Airborne Division's headquarters company, which is very important because that unit of about 250 personnel can coordinate logistics, coordinate support, coordinate planning for the additional flow of troops. And what we do know is that up to 1,500 additional soldiers will be going as well to provide whatever force protection or potentially options for any kind of use in the region. This goes in addition to the 2,200 Marines that are arriving in the Middle East very, very soon by ship.
Matt, meanwhile, Iran's launching a new wave of strikes against Israel and key sites in the Persian Gulf. What's the latest on the fighting?
So we've seen a very intense round of missiles being sent from Iran really over the last 24 hours. You're talking about nearly 20 different missiles being launched from Iran. More yesterday than today, but today alone we've seen another 5 missiles enter Israeli territory. Most of them were taken out by Israeli air defense systems. One of them appeared to get through. Whether the Israelis let it go through or not is the question now, because it landed in an open space near a power plant that did no damage. Sometimes the Israelis don't intercept an incoming missile when they determine the trajectory as not posing a threat to any structures or people. But regardless, Iran continues to show a defiant stance in the face of these ongoing negotiations, not only with Israel, but also striking sites all along the Gulf states. I'm thinking Bahrain, I'm thinking the airport in Kuwait where we saw a fuel tank get hit. The Saudis also said that they continue to intercept Iranian incoming fire. So the Iranians might, the United States rather, might say these negotiations are ongoing and that they're going well, but what we're seeing in the region, no question about it, is a defiant Iran that continues to send outgoing fire around the area.
Karen Travers, Louis Martinez, Matt Rivers, thank you. And former National Security Council Senior Director for Counterterrorism, Javed Ali, is here for more. Javed, thank you for coming on. So Iran's military spokesperson says there are no talks. The U.S. is negotiating with itself and, quote, do not call your defeat an agreement. What do you make of the sharp contrast in the messaging from Iran and the Trump administration?
So, Diane, nice to be with you. And clearly some strong words on both sides. And with President Trump saying that there's this 15-point plan that has been delivered to Iran, and the Iranians completely rejecting that has happened and saying that they are not willing to engage in diplomacy at this point. I think it should, and the results too, with the U.S. and Israel continuing to strike Iran, and as the previous segment showed, Iran continuing to fire its missiles across the region. So even if there is a diplomatic sort of channel being established through an intermediary, it doesn't look like either side is backing down from the fighting.
What does the mobilization of U.S. paratroopers tell you about the administration's plans?
So if this element of the 82nd Airborne is preparing to deploy to get into the region, on top of the Marines who are already being sent to the region or could be close to being on station in the Arabian Gulf, that'll give roughly about 4,000 to 5,000 troops. But still, that's a relatively small number that only could achieve a certain set of missions and not be enough military force with troops on the ground to actually take on a much bigger campaign like we saw in Iraq in 2003 with over 100,000 troops, not only on the U.S. side, but coalition troops driving to Baghdad. There is no way that small amount of troops could get that far inland into Iran or try to go to Tehran, because that's covering a huge amount of territory and vast distances, and you can't do that with that small amount of troops.
And meanwhile, Israel's defense minister says, quote, Israel's policy in Lebanon is clear. Where there is terror and missiles, there are no homes and no residents, and the IDF will control the security zone up to the litany. So what do you make of that?
So as we've seen since February 28th, that Hezbollah, despite being hit very hard by Israel in 2024 and 2025, has joined the fight to put pressure on Israel from the north. And Israel is spending a lot of military effort on attacking Hezbollah positions, but this through the air. But the potential for the IDF to be on the ground and push farther north into southern Lebanon to the Litani River, that would be a significant development. That would take a lot of IDF troops to do that. And Israel and Hezbollah have fought each other on the ground from 1982 to 2006. And this might be actually something that Hezbollah wants to try to create, sort of the conditions where you get the IDF troops trying to occupy territory in Lebanon and then have that low-level insurgency for, and that's what the fighting would look like.
All right, Javed Ali, thank you.
There you have it, you guys. That was the update coming out from ABC News on the war. Now, in addition to that, let's take a look at some more updates on the troops that are being deployed. This one coming out from Fox News.
Breaking news right now. Fox has just learned that the Pentagon is deploying more troops to the Middle East. It is part of the president's plans, moves to give the U.S. more options as he works now to negotiate with Iran's leaders. And one of those options could be sending in ground forces to secure important sites, especially around the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, more dramatic new video coming in from Central Command showing U.S. strikes destroying military targets of Iran's regime. Take a look at this. They're also dropping new photos for us of the new A-10 Thunderbolt II in action. Here's Mark Thiessen.
How does this thing end? It ends with no nuclear weapons, no nuclear fissile material, no ballistic missile program, no massacring protesters, right? And so how do you enforce that? You put the regime in a vice grip.
So because of the regime's near-total ban on outside media, video from inside Iran is rare. Here's some, though, that shows the aftermath of U.S.-Israeli strikes as they continue to hammer regime targets in Tehran and beyond. Our chief national security correspondent, Jennifer Griffin, is in Washington now with the very latest on what's going on. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Aisha. Well, the U.S. is sending about 1,500 additional troops. The commander of the 82nd Airborne Division, Major General Brandon Tegmeyer, along with elements of his headquarters staff, is expected to deploy to the Middle East soon. The 82nd Airborne is your ready force. U.S. officials have indicated ground forces could be used to take Iran's Karg Island or its highly enriched uranium, but publicly signaling these kinds of troop movements and naming the potential targets represents a lapse in operational security and could just be a negotiating tactic.
We see ourselves as part of this negotiation as well. We negotiate with bombs.
I said, Pete and General Raisin Kane, I think this thing's going to be settled very soon. Here they go. Oh, that's too bad. Pete didn't want it to be settled. They were not interested in settlement. They were interested in just winning this thing.
The A-10 Thunderbolt attack aircraft have been used to destroy the countless small Iranian naval vessels that are used to drop mines in the Strait of Hormuz. It takes very little, however, to threaten the strait.
It would be hard to keep it open. And so it is like what we found in Iraq. We could bomb Iraq pretty easily. We could even take Baghdad with relative ease. I tell people about this war, if you like this war, enjoy this first part, because this is the best part. Because everything after this will be harder. They only have to shoot a civilian tanker or cargo vessel, once a week.
Right.
And then people go, well, I don't know what day they're going to strike somebody, so I'm not going to let my ships go now.
General Stan McChrystal fought the insurgency in Iraq and Afghanistan for more than a decade and warns that the Iranians still have the asymmetric advantage. Aisha?
Okay, Jen Griffin live for us. Jen, thank you.
Be sure to like and...
So according to U.S. officials, the 82nd Airborne has been ordered to the Middle East, but the deployment comes as President Trump says negotiations are underway to end the fighting. Matt Finn is live in Dubai and joins us with the latest. Matt.
Brian, the commander of the 82nd Airborne Division, Major General Brandon Tegmeyer, has been ordered here to the Middle East. Our understanding is to assess whether the entire elite 82nd Airborne Division will be sent here for possible operations. It could mean thousands of additional U.S. troops here in the Middle East, in addition to Marines already on their way. Now, one of the objectives could be boots on the ground in Iran or possibly taking Iran's critical Karg Island. Now, this development comes as today marks the beginning of President Trump's 5-day pause on striking Iran's infrastructure, opening perhaps a path for diplomacy. President Trump says the U.S. is holding talks with the powers that be in Iran about a peace deal, although so far Iran denies there's been talks in recent days. And this morning, the Wall Street Journal reports that the United States has sent Iran a 15-point plan to end the war, which largely contains what the U.S. was asking of Iran before Operation Epic Fury began. The document was sent through intermediaries, and it calls on Iran in part to dismantle 3 nuclear sites, end any enrichment on Iranian soil, and to dismantle its ballistic missile program. Now, in return, Iran would have nuclear-related sanctions lifted. Now, yesterday, the Prime Minister of India said he had a productive call with President Trump about perhaps ending this war. And also, Pakistan says it is willing to physically hold deals and negotiations for a settlement here in the Middle East. Brian.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia comes out and says they're worried the president's too eager to talk. What about in the UAE? Are they thinking about even getting in the fight? Are they still firmly in the U.S.'s camp?
You know, Brian, in the day or two that I've been here, they've been putting out statements that makes it seem like they are really standing their ground against Iran, saying that they're not going to negotiate with terrorists. And just a couple of hours ago, they put out another statement saying that their economy will never be held hostage by Tehran. And also, they put out this new map that's a possible alternative to going through the Strait of Hormuz. And they are partnering with Saudi Arabia on that new possible route that may be able to avoid Iran entirely. Brian.
Yeah, they're looking to try to break the Gulf states away from the U.S. It seems like they're digging in with the U.S. Yeah. Matt Finn, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Yeah.
There you have it, you guys. We're hearing that more troops are getting ready on their way to go to the Middle East. And you heard them say that some of the Gulf states, the nations, they are saying, hey, Trump, you're moving too fast on peace. Don't just go right to diplomacy. We might need to hit Iran a little bit harder. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think we should be doing here? More war or peace diplomacy? Let me know in the comments. War or diplomacy? Drop it in there. Or war or peace? Drop it in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. But we're hearing some, as you saw from the video clips, they're saying, hey, we actually want to win this. We don't want a diplomatic solution. We want the IRGC completely removed so that way they can no longer push their agendas in any way, shape, or form. Complete annihilation. As we have heard, I shared with you Donald Trump saying that he is ready to unleash hell in the Middle East if they don't come to an agreement. And we're hearing that Iran has outright rejected the 15-point plan that was released by Donald Trump. As you can see, Iran rejects Trump's plan to end the war and issues its own demands. State TV has reported. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some more updates here. The number one threat, the unseen force driving the modern combat fears right now. And some of the fears are potential attacks here on U.S. soil as well. As Donald Trump is saying he's going to unleash hell, we're hearing that's for Iran in the Middle East, but we're also hearing that Iran is saying they're prepared, they're ready, and they're also ready for retaliation against the U.S. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more updates coming out.
Welcome back. Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Wednesday, March 25th. It is 7 a.m. on the button on the East Coast. I hope you're having a good Wednesday morning. We've got new information this morning. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says allies are, quote, coming together to help the United States secure the Strait of Hormuz. So far, 30 countries have formed a coalition to help open this critical waterway and maintain the flow of oil. President Trump is looking at this as a priority, working to reopen the critical oil passageway as soon as this weekend. Reports say that the president is sending the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East to join the Marines to either assist in getting that strait open or do it themselves. Joining me now is U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker. Ambassador, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What can you tell us about our NATO allies and their support for this operation?
Well, good morning, Maria. Great to be with you. What I can tell you is, we've been in overdrive here diplomatically, pushing our allies, both here in Brussels and across capitals in Europe and in the Middle East, to convince everybody. Unfortunately, it took some convincing that this is more important to them than it is to the United States. I mean, we get very little, if any, oil through the Strait of Hormuz. It certainly is affecting, the oil prices of the United States. But that's one of the great things that President Trump was able to do, is to make America energy independent. And that independence obviously guarantees our supply. Now, we have allies that are finally stepping up. I think, from the time this conflict broke out, they were certainly non-committal to what they could bring to the fight or bring to help us. But, they have done things that I think goes sometimes unnoticed. We had several allies here in Europe and in NATO that were providing key and crucial basing overflight and access. That whether it's Suda Bay, where I was in Greece on the Isle of Crete, or whether it was other countries, including Germany and France, that were providing our ability to prosecute this fight. So, there are key allies that are contributing, that are providing things. We just want more, and we need more, because even though President Trump has been very clear, Maria, that, we don't need this, it's good to act as a group of nations, because this is ultimately going to help everyone. And an Iran that does not have a nuclear weapon, that can no longer produce missiles at scale, that can no longer menace the region and this strait, I think is good for the world. And ultimately, the world needs to step up and participate.
So when did the Europeans get religion here, Ambassador? Because when the president first reached out for help, the comment from Germany was, quote, "This is not our war." And then 2 days after that, we see Iran sending a long-range missile to the Diego Garcia Island with obvious evidence that it does, in fact, have access to these long-range missiles that can actually have the potential to hit much of Europe.
Well, obviously, they found religion after we began explaining to them why this is crucial for them to be involved in their own interests. And I think, unfortunately, because the president wanted to have this be a surprise, and because of the way it was timed, it caught a lot of our European allies flat-footed. And, we have been working over the last year since we had the summit in The Hague to get our allies to be more capable, to buy more equipment, to think more offensively and defensively in their own interest and in the interest of the alliance. And I just think that they don't understand, or continue to maybe not comprehend, how absolutely dangerous this world is, how the United States of America is going to lead a free world, a world that has to confront these types of evil regimes like we see in Iran. And, obviously the president's language was very strong as it regards to NATO. It was buttressed by me here in Brussels every weekend, all week long, making sure that they are coming around. And I think we're seeing much progress in that regard. But at the same time, what's going to matter is not strongly worded statements. What's going to matter is them showing up with capabilities, whether that's minesweepers, frigates, and other assets in the Gulf and in the Strait.
We've been talking a lot about drone technology, Ambassador, and how the president wants mass production of kamikaze drones, of drones not just for security, but for the U.S. to be using lower-priced drones, the way we saw so prevalent in the Ukraine war. And do you have confidence that, in fact, you can stop the hostility coming out of Iran with those drones in the Strait as soon as this weekend?
Yeah, there are a lot of promising counter-drone technologies. I saw some of them being used in Ukraine when I visited in November of last year. But I've also seen what the United States of America and some of our startups and some of our companies can produce. And there is a lot of good things happening. It is certainly the #1 threat. And whether it's the autonomous sea or underwater vessels, or whether it's from the sky with the Shaheds and other drone technologies, I think we're going to have to invest a lot. And I've talked to my friend, Secretary Driscoll at the Army, about this topic, and I know he's moving as fast as possible. Some of this is just the bureaucratic nature of the Pentagon and adapting new technologies, and we're just going to have to break through that. I've been pushing very hard here at NATO, among our allies and within the United States military, to really move out on these, because there's no time to waste. We're seeing that play out right now.
Meanwhile, Russia is still on the march. New overnight, Russia launching a barrage of drones and missiles across Ukraine. The massive assault reportedly killed 4 people, injuring more than 24 others. The attacks caused NATO to scramble its military resources and jets in states neighboring Russia for potential response. Ambassador, what can you tell us?
948 drones in a 24-hour period. I don't see that as a strength, actually, by the Russians. That's because of the counter drone technology we've seen Ukrainians deploy and their multi-layered air defense, it takes these massive assaults to even get anything through the air defense. And, you know, at the same time, at NATO, we do respond with F-16s and F-35s, and our air policing is very strong. But this is, to our earlier point, this is the technology and this is the innovation that we have to lead here with our allies to make sure that we can do this much cheaper, because it's, again, it costs $25,000 an hour to operate one of these jets, and the munitions on them are hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to take out ultimately drones that can be produced at a fraction of that. And we're going to have to bend that cost curve to our advantage. And I think that is what President Trump is making sure that the military is moving out on right now, because this is not theoretical anymore. This is real world, and we need to make sure we continue to be the best in the world on these technologies.
Yeah, and that's why over the weekend I spoke with the CEO of AeroVironment, the drone manufacturer, as well as the CEO of Skydio. We've got Adam Bry, the CEO of Skydio, on this morning as we talk about this new face of warfare. Would you agree with that it is a new face of warfare right now with this new use of those lower cost drones?
Yeah, and I had the chance to visit Skydio when I was doing a technology and innovation tour recently, and certainly, you know, the quadcopter drones and drone technology and how they're used on the battlefield is something we need to be ready for. It's not exactly how we're going to fight, and we're seeing that a little different right now in Iran versus Ukraine, because the way the United States fights is obviously with very sophisticated, technologically advanced systems, but we still have to be ready to counter the drone technologies, whether that's subsurface, on the water, or ultimately in the air. And I think we continue to develop these technologies. We have some great companies, including Skydio, that are doing fantastic things. Bullfrog has another technology. And I think we just need to make sure that we are forward-leaning as the United States of America, and that we also push our allies to innovate in this as well, because it can't just be the United States. It's got to be all 31 NATO allies that are bringing technologies and innovation to the table, and then bring it. The best will win those competitions, and then we'll all adapt and adopt those technologies so that we can be cutting edge and ultimately keep our soldiers safe, because we have the best military in the world in the United States, and we should be proud of that. It is awesome what they're doing right now in Iran and to Iran. I mean, we have prosecuted over 8,000 targets in the first 25 days of this war. I mean, that's tremendous. That each one of those is a capability that we have eliminated from Iran being able to deploy against the region and against our allies.
There you have it, you guys. Man, let me know your thoughts in the comments. We're going to be seeing where we go from here. And they mentioned the Shahed drones, which I've reported to you, which was a major concern as well, as we were hearing threats of potential sleeper cell attacks, lone wolf attacks, and drone attacks. Now, we received that unverified warning from the FBI for California, and they talked about those Shahed drones that came out from Iran. And they're saying that Iran knows that even if they don't hit the target, that if the United States blocks them, it's an economic war, because those Shahed drones only cost about $20,000 to $50,000 per drone for them to launch. Yet the United States is using THAAD missile defense systems that costs millions. So they're saying every time they do that, they know it's an unbalanced investment that is hurting the United States. So Iran, not even necessarily as concerned about hitting the target as getting the United States involved. And we're hearing there's probably going to be more involvement. The breaking news coming out today, March 25th. Take a look here. You can see the White House says that Trump said he is prepared to unleash hell if Iran does not make a deal. And we're hearing no deal is in sight. We've been watching the live feeds. Iran rejects Trump's plan to end the war and issues its own demands. State TV has reported. Iran rejects U.S. ceasefire plans, issues its own demands as strikes land across the Middle East. We're hearing that right now. Donald Trump has that 15-point plan. Iran has issued its own 5-point plan, and the White House threatens more attacks if Iran doesn't make a deal. And we're watching the live feeds also from Al Jazeera as well, foreign news media outlets, just keeping an eye on everything as the foreign minister for Iran, Araghchi, he says no talks with the U.S. as Trump vows to hit even harder. So we're hearing that things are just escalating with the conflict in the Middle East. Now, I'm going to keep you up to date on that, but we also had some breaking news coming out earlier today as well. Take a look at this. Just a couple of hours ago, right before I went live, jury orders Meta and Google to pay a woman $6 million in a social media addiction trial, as we're hearing that they are saying they're concerned about children getting addicted to social media, and they're not denying it. They're saying that right now some of the habits, they're not good, and they're saying we need to do simple things. Notifications for parents, not letting kids stay up all night and have addictive habits. Now, if you have kids, know somebody, you're concerned about their kids on devices too much, totally understandable. We should control that. But also, they're saying let's put together some legislation that has new rules for social media platforms to apply just to keep the kids safe. We want to make sure that there are no addictive habits that are being set in place here. Now, if you support that, you want to help keep kids safe, maybe put some new restrictions for young children, things like that. Just very simple things that can be done to really change things. I've teamed up, partnered with change.org. There's a petition pinned in the comments. You can click it, sign it. Just takes less than a minute. Help get support for that. We're really pushing to see change to help support children on social media. So thank you to change.org making that available. I hope that if you're interested, you go ahead and take a second to sign that. Help out a ton. But that is the latest, you guys. I'll keep you up to speed on everything. And I saw that there was new people hopping on saying it was their first time to the channel. Glad you made it. Doing daily updates here. I'll keep you up to speed on everything. Hit the subscribe button. Totally free. Hit the like button if you haven't done so yet. Helps support the channel while we're live. Spreads this out further across the YouTube platform. And as you know, here on the channel, I cite all of my sources. So everything that I reference, you're going to see the dates, the sources, where they're coming from, and you can know and rest assured that this is the latest information. As of today, March 25th, 2026, it's currently 5:28 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Houston, Texas. And we're going to be seeing where we go from here. I will continue to keep you guys up to date on everything so that way you know exactly what is taking place. But that is the latest, you guys. I see some people dropping World War III in the comments. We'll see. Regardless of what unfolds, though, I'll be sure to keep you up to speed on everything. Oh, JG Rose, 44, thank you for the $10 super chat. Just so you know, we already have a special type of forces. They're already in control of certain islands in the Persian Gulf. They have it secured for jumpers that are arriving. Thank you for that. Sorry I missed that super chat. Appreciate that support a ton. And also, we're hearing more are on the way. So we will see. I'll keep you guys up to date. But we're hearing that if by Friday there is not an agreement, the Trump administration is saying they are prepared to unleash hell on Earth. That is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll keep you up to speed, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.